public hearing of the Trade Subcommittee of the Joint Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade for the inquiry into strengthening Australia's trade and investment relations with Africa. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I also acknowledge the cultures of any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present with us today. This hearing will be broadcast on the Parliament's website, and the proof and official transcripts of the proceedings will be published on the committee's webpage. I now welcome representatives from the Australian Advocacy Centre and Western Sydney University to give evidence today. For the Hansard record, would you please state your names and the capacity in which you appear before the Trade Subcommittee?
Good morning, everyone. So, dear distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Norezi Habamwe, and I'm the founder and executive director of the African Australian Advocacy Centre, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to advocating for and empowering the people of Africa at the centre across Australia. On behalf of the African Australian Advocacy Centre, we commend your leadership in advancing this critical inquiry into Australia's engagement with Africa. Our submission, developed in collaboration with the partners including the African Professional of Australia, VT Capital and Western University, offers an evidence-informed perspective on a relationship with immense yet underutilized potential. Despite expanding diplomatic ties and trade nearing $60 billion, Africa remains Australia's least engaged trading region. Our research highlights persistent barriers, limited trading agreements, regulatory complexity, and the lack of accessible market intelligence, just to name a few. At the same time, the African Australian diaspora stands as a powerful strategic bridge, bringing lived experience, cultural insight, and global networks that can unlock deeper trade, investment, and partnership opportunities. We therefore recommend strengthening diaspora-led trade facilitation, expanding bilateral and regional agreements, improving access to centralized market information, and increasing targeted support for Australian business engaging with African markets. We remain committed to working alongside government and partners to advance inclusive, evidence-driven engagement that delivers a shared economic and social value between Australia and Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to also welcome the representative from VT Capital as well today. And so for the Hansard record, if you could please both state your names and the capacity in which you appear before the Trade Subcommittee today.
Thank you. My name is Frederick Chege. I am a co-founder of VT Capital. VT Capital is a stock brokerage firm based in Parramatta. Rumor has it I am Australia's first sub-Saharan African stockbroker, self-employed and licensed. And I am grateful for the opportunity that you have given the African Australian community to chime in on how we can boost our investment and trade relations. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Hassan Gholipur Freduni. I'm an associate professor of property economics at Western Sydney University. And before that, I was an economist at Swinburne University. I've done a lot of research on Middle East and North African countries. And currently, I'm supervising Frederick's PhD thesis as well. So we as a team submit this application.
Great. Thank you. So this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. I'd now just ask members to introduce themselves. Yep.
Thank you. Senator Jess Collins, Senator from New South Wales.
Tony Zappia, member for Macon in South Australia.
Shane Newman, federal member for Blair in South East Queensland around Ipswich.
Fiona Phillips, federal member for Gilmore on the New South Wales South Coast.
Claire Cotterham, member for Sturt in Adelaide, South Australia.
And I'm David Batt. I'm the member for Hinkler, which is in Queensland.
Thank you. And are now in, oh, we also on the, sorry, on the teleconference, we have,
Madonna Jarrett, member for Brisbane.
Sam Lim, member for Kangi from Western Australia.
are you online, Miss Jarrett?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Excellent. Thank you.
She's a member for Brisbane.
Did you not hear me, Chair?
Thank you.
Steve Georgianis.
Do we have Mr. Georgianis on the line? Okay. All right. So I'll now ask you to invite you to make an opening statement before we proceed to discussion. So you might.
Thank you. So despite the growing diplomatic presence and the trade flows approaching, as I said, $6 billion in Africa remains Australia's least engaged trade region. So this was evidence-based following the engagement we've been having with many people from African communities in Australia and also with the heads of missions in Canberra. Survey findings from diaspora professionals reveal key barriers including limited trade agreements, regulatory complexity, duplication of taxes, and of course, a critical lack of accessible market information. Importantly, the African Australian diaspora an expanding, skilled, and culturally connected community represents a strategic asset for strengthening bilateral engagement. African Australian Advocacy Centre recommends the strengthening diaspora-led trade facilitation and advisory mechanism, expanding bilateral and regional trade agreements with Africa economies, and especially focusing on areas that have never been tapped in. Because when it comes to Africa and Australia, many people understand the mining areas. So we want the government also to look into other areas that will be able to see that trade being expanded to. So last but not least, we commend the committee for its leadership and we reiterate our commitment to advancing the inclusive, evidence-informed partnership that unlock shared economic and social value between Australia and Africa.
Thank you. Yep.
I think Africa-Australia relations present numerous opportunities. We're coming from an area of, say, stereotypes. Getting in will probably show the real opportunities that lie, whether for trade or investments. And it only takes one person, and then the rest will follow. So I guess with the Senate or with the inquiry coming in, this will bring more limelight towards the continent and towards the relations. So I think it's only a matter of time that we'll actually start seeing the real efforts of this inquiry and many others that are shaping the direction that we hope we'll be taking.
Thank you.
No, they were speaking on behalf of our team.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Okay, so I might just ask a general question to start with. Obviously, we're looking at growing trade between Australia and Africa. What recommendations do you have for us as a committee? What should the Australian government do?
I think on a macro scale, it's political goodwill. Australia's really focused much on the Indo-Pacific. Not to say that Africa is on the other side of the Indian Ocean, say from WA side. I know this is a top-down approach, focusing on one particular area or particular geographical area and growing that. I think there's an opportunity or there's a chance for us to, as Australians, to look more into the African side, but starting internally, growing the African-Australian community initially. So for instance, we have various corporations that operate within the African continent, not necessarily coercing them to support their local African-Australian communities, but incentivizing them to support African-Australian communities, grow their voices, probably including recruitment, mentorship, and the like. And as we do so, the relation between the Africans here and say the Africans back home, or the Australians here and the Australians across the African continent, is actually bridged not only using the public sector, but using the private sector. So my thinking is probably look into how we can incentivize corporations that already have operations on the African continent to support the African Australians onshore to actually do the job across the continent.
Thank you. Mr. Newman.
Yes, barriers and impediments. I'm really interested in two things there. First up is you talk about the lack of proportional migration. And I think about my own electorate, where there's a very large Indian population, very large Pacific population, particularly in some of the schools are like 40% people from Samoa and Tonga and places like that. But, only about 10% from the various countries in Africa. So I'm just interested in your comment there about the lack of proportional migration, as well as the insufficient trade agreements, because we have trade agreements with lots of countries, but almost none with Africa.
I think this you need to look at it holistically. You'd start with the number of high commissions or chanceries Australia has across the African continent. So most have been shut down over time. The few operating tend to serve a certain number of countries. Now, if you say, for instance, I'll give an example, Kenya. Kenya serves, I think, most of East and Central Africa. Take you from, say, Somalia, would like to get an Australian visa. You first need to go to Kenya. If Kenya does not let you get in, then you'll not see Australia. Maybe you'll need to go to South Africa, which is more of a distance. So I think the presence that Australia should have on the continent, in as much as, yes, I know there's cost-benefit analysis, taxpayer decisions that come into play, I think that's one of the avenues we can start with. Increasing the footprint of the Australian High Commission could be through the indirect mechanisms that various governments have. And I think growing that influence or growing that presence will tend to show people that, yes, Australia does exist, there's various opportunities, and chances are you'll be able to get more balance on the migration end and more representation even locally once you get more footprint on that side.
Can I pick up that point that Frederick's made, Hassan, because you're an expert on Middle East and North Africa.
Yeah,
The evidence.
a lot of research.
Oh yes, okay.
Not
Well,
really.
you're a lot more knowledgeable than any of us. We've had evidence in the inquiry about the fact that Australia's footprint, diplomatic footprint, seems to be very much Commonwealth country focused, very English speaking focused, and the Francophile parts are not emphasised. And much of our diplomatic footprint is from places like Lisbon and Paris into Northern Africa in parts where French is spoken quite regularly. So I'm interested in your comments and your research and your knowledge about Australia's involvement there in Northern Africa.
In that particular part. I leave it to Frederick to talk about that because he combined these results in this report.
Yeah. Although not fully empirical, if you look at a country like Algeria, for instance, Australia's footprint closed in 1991. We tended to track whether there was a change in trade between Australia and Algeria over the time. It's ticking up now over a couple of years, but generally speaking, where there is footprint, there is a growth in relations between the two. But you come back to a very important point. The Anglosphere vis-a-vis the Francosphere of Africa. Australia, yes, but by design, you'd have more influence there. I will not talk about Middle East because I don't know about Middle East, but I talk about the African side because to come here, you'd need an English language test. Chances are, or logically, it will be easier for someone who's been speaking English to maybe ace that test in contrast to someone who probably need some extra effort because they speak French or another language besides English to get into Australia. So I say it comes back to the same footprint that is required or that is needed to potentially assist in bridging this. Now, other countries, say Japan, for instance, have Japanese lessons in onshore in whatever African countries. Okay. Turkey, for instance, has Turkish lessons. Russia, China, yeah. So all of these fellas with their presence, not just government, but even private sector, some of them are commercial. We'll have to agree on that. They run all these programs that aid in language learning, culture learning, and then breed the sort of assimilation in and out of, say, Africa to wherever that's they're going.
Okay, so I'll hand it back to the chair. But it seems like our footprint and our focus, you said, Frederick, seems to be Southern Africa and East. So it's Kenya and it's South Africa, Nigeria and the North,
Nigeria is growing, though. You
Yeah.
have to give it that way. But
Nigeria and Ghana as well.
Yeah, as well, yeah.
But again, if you do a typical survey, so in addition to my role in VT Capital, I chair the African Professionals of Australia.
Yep.
And you try to do a survey to random people's relatives across the African continent and ask what do you know about Australia. The first thing they'll say is kangaroo. The second thing they'll say is the Opera House. Now, the third thing, they go silent. So that's all, those are the stereotypical things that they know about. Nothing else. That just shows you how hard it is for people to know what Australia is or where Australia is. Again, if you're a tourist converting your AUD into local currency, you will struggle. You'll be told to first go through the USD and then you come in. And again, this is a bit harder. This is now the RBA's work. It's not your work. But then it's a whole, I call it a whole whirlwind of the presence. When there's more presence, there's more trade. There's more relations, there's more understanding.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Senator Collins or Mr. Batt?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's all right. Thanks for your time. And might just follow up on with the barriers impediment side first. I've got two, one innate and one opportunity. So we have, as a subcommittee, heard some issues in relation to visa issues from students and also businesses looking at trading coming into Australia. Have you received any or can you give us any information on what your thoughts are on that, if that is happening?
I'll speak again from Kenyan side.
Yep.
Kenya says thank you. Kenya, I think, has the highest number of international students in Australia, over 10,000. The number has grown sevenfold post-COVID. I do not know what exact reasons. Our government would better be placed to tell us, but I guess caliber of applications either coming up or better, they're more ethical, they're better placed than others. So yes, it does happen. But again, I go back to my initial point, diplomatic footprint. So for instance, East African visa applications are processed in South Africa. So they are, once you finish your application, they're all chartered by plane into Southern Africa. Some of these things I wouldn't know because I'm not an insider to get to know and understand the proper workings of it. But I still say physical presence is important. It grows a lot, hampers a few of the gridlocks that are there. But not to say that it's not improving, it is improving.
I can also add something in terms of visas. So our work involves working with many African community groups. So the consultation we'll do is that the visa for humanitarian people come here and the humanitarian visa has decreased for the last 20 years. So this is because due to geo and the politics. For example, when we engage with the Home Affairs, there's always emphasized every year. So which can be understandable, but in terms of visa, the visa that we're seeing being given to many people from Africa are international student visa. But when it comes to business visa, that's what we're still lacking. That's what we really want to also focus on, because there are many people from Africa who would love to invest, as also many people in Australia also love to invest in Africa. So we want to see how that can be somehow. If it can be a homework for Australian government to look at how we can increase that business visa so people can come and do their businesses here. We have people who are doing small businesses where they export and import a few things, but love to see that business being expanded to other areas.
Just to chime in, it's not just on the Australian side. The African side too has to blame. A few politicians have to blame, because some of the things that we produce as a country will impact us negatively. So if whatever is happening, whatever incidents are happening, if say a foreign government sees that and I come to apply for a visa from there, I understand I'll be on a red flag by and large. I will not say that you need to analyze the situation on its own merits and individual merits. I do get it. Sometimes you do a blanket ban or blanket waiver and all that. So I think it's not just on the Aussie side. There's also things we need to do internally, get our house in order to at least boost up the numbers if possible.
Is it off on the
Yeah.
Yep. And then from the opportunity side, I see you did a survey and you got 60 responses within a month, which was great from your local diaspora people here.
Yep.
And what interests me though is like what a lot of people were talking about, say mining and trade is a big one, whereas it's actually only 10% on yours, but 38% of people say that opportunities are in education and research and development, which is interesting. We hear education a bit, but not as much in the R&D space. So what sort of opportunities are you hearing in that area that for for Australians to go and do into Africa for trade?
Stereotypically, Africans love to study. Parents would always want their kids get a master's, get a PhD, and then you're a full student. I'm a case in point. My parents pushed me to do a PhD. Mining, like you mentioned, I think a very selective cohort gets into mining or gets benefit from mining. Chances are you probably live in a remote area where a mine will be operated. So around that area, the mine or the big mining company is your forte. Chances are you'll not leave that area. But the fellows who are moving into Australia, for instance, now the 10,000 plus students are coming to study and probably leave here after that. So the education perspective, I'd say, stems from a cultural upbringing, that education is vital. Then again, a chunk of the continent was colonized by the British. Many of them are former British colonies. The mentality that we have is British or Western education is a bit better than what you have locally. So that whole drilling in from a child to old age leads you to aspiring to get more Western education. And Australia has been quite friendly in contrast to the UK, US, and a few other countries. So that is why education in our survey, at least in our sample, was ranked amongst the highest. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Ms. Cotherham, thank you. Thank you all for being here this morning. We, in the papers provided, we have a summary table in relation to the survey. And one that I was interested in was the role of the Australian government in identifying new opportunities and assist market access. I just wanted to understand what was meant by tax reforms and flexible policies. So the indication we have is that 10%, I suppose, of survey respondents selected that option. What are you sort of thinking when it comes to tax reforms? What could the Australian government do, and how would these tax reforms promote trade between Australia and the African continent?
As a limitation, the survey was quite limited.
Yeah.
We didn't get into specifics, but my own personal take on this would be the challenges that one gets to register, say, a foreign business in Australia, going through the ATO to be registered, getting the exemptions, will probably be what these fellas would be talking about. But again, this is my own sentiment, just from the results that I kept seeing from there, although we did not specifically give them room to expound and explain themselves. I guess further taking, we'll probably look to deepen this survey, maybe get more detailed responses, and probably submit to the committee at a favourable time when we've got better answers.
Sure, but it comes down to the ease of doing business in Australia as a company based in the African continent looking to do business here.
That's
that was one of the challenges.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second one, and again, you may have the same answer, that you need more specifics with the survey response.
Yeah.
It talked about barriers and impediments in a general sense, and then it's got disdain and stiff global competition.
Yeah.
What is disdain?
In this case, it was probably an inclination towards racism and
Right.
stereotypes.
Okay.
Whereas you do not really know the person, but you've already drawn your conclusions based on the person's heritage, the person's origin, the person's stock, clothes,
Yep.
and so on and so forth.
Okay, so people looking to do business in Australia feeling that there are negative stereotypes, as it were, which is a barrier to being accepted into the business community.
That's correct.
Right, okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we'll go to Ms. Jarrett.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to follow up on some of the data from your survey as well that was presented to us. And it talked about 45% of people noted lack of sufficient information to support decision making, and that's one of the main barriers. And I'm wondering what the answer is. We heard yesterday from some people that there are things like she trade that are available to some people, and that might be a good example that we could think about. Do you have any thoughts on how we could improve that information requirement that people are looking for?
Yes. Again, I think the Australian government has done its part on this. Information is available on the website and the all. This, I find, is more of our inherent challenges, in the sense that we tend to believe in our friends, family, our close circles for information. We tend to rely on secondary information as opposed to seeking primary information. For instance, if I want to apply for a visa, I'll ask my neighbor or my friend or the migration agent. Whatever they tell me, I take as gospel truth. So I do not actually take the bother to go into the website or government website to actually look for the source of information. In this one, we did a survey and presented to the state member for Bankstown, Honorable Jadib. And what we came to the conclusion was some people would prefer translations from English into their local languages. So we're doing a program, trying to roll out a program of translating maternity programs, especially neonatal maternity programs, from English into local African languages to give African women as they give birth. So I think this is more inherent in our part, trying to seek information from close circles as opposed to from the source. So we tend to get overwhelmed with multiple bits of info from various sources. Some are incorrect, some are correct. But at the end of the day, when we make our decision, we get a bit confused. So then we find that there is a lack of information, whereas it's actually out there. So I think to answer you, how can we bridge this? Translations, I think, would be one, if possible, into various other languages, various African languages. But again, I'd say more information, not more information, but more channels of communicating this. Probably, again, goes back to my point of increasing diplomatic presence. Probably these fellows will be running roadshows, seminars, webinars, and the like, or even just partnering with private sector who are onshore already, and maybe having a week or so just inform about, if, for instance, it's migration matters, try get consultants come in, speak. If it's education matters, get whoever is in charge of those and just share it out to the community from source.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I also noticed, if I could ask one more question, Chair, you talked about the importance of the Chamber of Commerce as a means of boosting trade relationships, and we've heard how important it is to strengthen relationships between business, customers, looking, importing, exporting, everything. But we also heard yesterday the potential use of the Business Roundtable. I don't know if you're aware of that, and apparently it was described as an organisation of business leaders who have been vetted, for want of a better word, and therefore are more reliable, I guess, in terms of somebody who might invest or to do business with. Are you aware of other groups like that, or that group as well, that we could be, maybe that becomes part of the information sharing, right?
Yes, most certainly. The Chambers of Commerce and the business roundtables, they do assist, yes. But maybe I'll disclose my dislike for a few of the Chambers of Commerce, because in my own experience as a business owner, sometimes I find the fees they charge are too hefty, especially for small business owners. So it beats logic. Am I going to do my business to support my membership in a Chamber of Commerce, or am I going to do my business to survive? Then you get locked out of various opportunities. It becomes a club of people coming in. But again, this is my own personal experience. I know 21% of our respondents disclose that they prefer opportunities via the Chambers of Commerce. But there are other informal groupings that do exist, say, subordinate to the Chambers of Commerce. But say, as a government, if you want to target them, I guess you check if they're registered, you do your due diligence. The likelihood is you will find it easier to work with organized Chambers of Commerce. And some of them not only have relations across African and Australian governments, they also have within their local communities, which I guess is what we would be striving to do, empower the local communities by getting information. So long story short, sidelining my personal instances or personal experiences, the Chambers of Commerce and Business Roundtable do have an impactful role to play. So I guess empowering them with info, opportunities, unless they're able to disseminate to their members, those that exist within their environments.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. Sapia, do you have a question?
Thanks, Chair. My question goes to this. In the evidence we've heard both yesterday and even what I'm picking up this morning, we're dealing with a continent with, I think it's 54 or 55 countries. And I'm not convinced that there is consistency throughout the continent in how we should approach different things. So my question to you is really this. Would it not be more beneficial to start focusing on key countries and strengthen the relationship with those key countries where there might be a little bit more stability and certainty, and then slowly move to other countries rather than trying to look at Africa as a whole.
I 100% agree with you. Our last question in the survey asked about the African Continental Free Trade Area. In my personal opinion, it's an ambitious target, but we're very fragmented as Africans, whether we're from the East. So in the East, for instance, you've got the East African community. Even within the East African community, there's a bit of fractions within a few other countries. They formed what is called coalition of the willing. Only 3 countries of the 8 decided to go together. Again, in the West, the Economic Commission of West African States, ECOWAS, again, some are splitting through. In the North, similar. In the South and Central, similar case. So I do agree with you. You're better off targeting in individual countries one by one. So like what Minister Thistlewaite did last year, going to Namibia, signing an MOU with Namibia, South Africa separately, and so on and so forth. I do think for effectiveness and maintaining a streamlined process, in my personal opinion, you're better off addressing specific country by country. Over time, because it's a herd mentality, when one country sees that, yes, we've signed with this one, the others will up their game and follow suits. But again, we are a very fragmented people, at least just to say that. So everyone tries to outdo the other.
Yeah.
I can also add something to my colleague Fred, that we have started a project proposal where we would love to encourage the federal government to start collaborating closely with the African Union, so that we lead the federal government to identify the key partners that you can work with. I agree with you. You can't work with everyone, but if there's a way we can identify the key countries that are stable, for example, in a democracy, even financially, that would be a very good thing. So, for example, there's a proposal we had where we can work with the federal government as a bridge to work with the African Union, especially when it comes to issues, for example, like trading or like a cultural exchange, like a soft diplomacy. Federal government can collaborate with the local Africans and diaspora to engage with African Union. That way, we'll be able to, for example, to work together to start, for example, identifying those countries that Australian government can work with. So it's all about partnerships, collaboration, and trust between the federal government and the local Africans and diaspora.
Just to add on to your point, in my personal assessment, within the Western Hemisphere, in my African understanding, you've got the core countries, the UK, US, Germany, France. Those ones are well known. You don't need to tell anybody about them. Then I say you've got, say, the next level down. You've got Australia, you've got Canada, you've got New Zealand. Yeah. Not very many people know them, so there's not much stereotype against them. So I find this second-tier people, the countries, will find it actually a bit easier to step in and set up relations with specific African countries, as opposed to you trying to do a blanket introduction to, say, East Africa, West Africa, whatever Africa. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for your time today. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, please forward it to the Secretariat by Thursday, 28th of May 2026. Please note that responses to questions on notice will be published on the website as submissions to the inquiry. You will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to assist with answering any questions taken on notice today, and you will have an opportunity to request corrections to any transcription errors. I'll now suspend the hearing. The public hearing. I now welcome representatives from Kenya Community New South Wales to give evidence today. For the Hansard record, would you please state your names and the capacity in which you appear before the Trade Subcommittee?
Hi, my name is Matthew Kitao Degwa. I appear the capacity of the chairperson of the Kenya Community New South Wales.
Great.
Good morning. My name is Frederick Chege, and I appear in my capacity as the founding public officer of the Kenya Community of New South Wales. Thank you again.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Fabian Jamutai Koech, and I appear before you all as a KC-NSW executive member.
Good morning. My name is Masichebet Mutual, and I appear as the member of External Liaison and Government Affairs Committee at the Kenya Community in the South Wales.
Okay, this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. I now will just ask members, first of all, to introduce themselves. I might start with you.
Thank you, Senator Jess Collins, Senator for New South Wales.
Tony Zappia, member for Macon in South Australia.
Shane Newman, federal member for Blair in South East Queensland area.
Fiona Phillips, federal member for Gilmore on the New South Wales South Coast.
Claire Clutterham, federal member for Sturt in Adelaide, South Australia.
And I'm David Batt. I'm the member for Hinkler in regional Queensland.
And joining us on the teleconference today,
I'm Sam Lim.
You go, Sam.
I'm Sam Lim from Perth, member for Pengni.
And Madonna Jarrett, member for Brisbane and Queensland.
thank you. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement before we proceed to discussion.
Thank you, Chair. So, the Kenya Community in New South Wales is one of the largest and the most structured Kenyan diaspora organization in Australia. I represent a broad network of professionals, students, entrepreneurs, cultural associations, and community leaders. As a community organization, Kenya Community draws upon grassroots experience, professional expertise, and practical understanding. Today we have a submission on matters between Australia and Africa, and with my team we are going to make the submission and we are going to wait for the questions. Yeah, thank you so much for this time. We are greatly honored.
Yeah, great. All right. I'll just start with a general question. So what can the Australian government do, I guess, to support like your organisation to help grow trade?
So at the moment, what we are focusing on, and we are going to mention it, we are trying to establish a centre of relations between Kenya and Australia that is going to be pioneered by the Kenya Community New South Wales. What we can is to bridge the gap between Australia and Africa, but with us bias towards Kenya. So most organizations don't have a center that is directly focused on trade. So as we are going to explain, one of the things that we are trying to do is establish this center with the support of the government and focus directly on trade. My team are going to mention about the gaps and the barriers between Australia and Africa and how the center is going to respond to those gaps.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you like to
I'll give them
comments on that?
Okay, thank you so much. Honorable members, I would like to address 3 issues, and I will be looking into critical minerals and renewable energy, and vocational training, education services, and education technology, digital transformation, mobile money, and cybersecurity. So the first thing we're going to look into is vocational training and education services. As we all know, the young population of Africa is projected to surpass 1 billion individuals by 2050. That is according to World Bank. And the need for technical skills professional education and digital education systems is growing. And we are looking into the good TVET and tertiary education systems here in Australia, including TAFE and EdTech in Australia. This can help the African government to reform their workforce development strategies in manufacturing, ICT, renewable energy, and agribusiness. And we're looking into cooperation in the design of curricula, the issuance of digital credentials, and the training of teachers would assist in narrowing the gap also in skill gap in Africa, and also the focus into Kenya. And this will allow Australian institutions to enter an already developing education market with positive experience that has been experienced currently in Asia. We'd also like to talk about the digital transformation, mobile money, and cybersecurity. So we see the continent of Africa is the most innovative in mobile money, with Kenya being a pioneer in mobile money, where you don't have to link your mobile service provider, in terms of mobile number, to any bank, and you can do transaction directly. We look into 70% of all mobile money transactions worldwide, and with the growing adoption of fintech ecosystems and digital identity, e-commerce, and government systems, we are looking into a growing demand to have reliable cybersecurity frameworks. We've seen a bit of a success here in Australia, and this is something Africa can adopt. We also have the ability of cyber regulation, digital payments, and in terms of governance, which has been a bit of a challenge back in Africa. Collaboration with fintech hubs in Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, and Nigeria would both enhance data protection, digital trust system, and also provide markets to Australian ICT companies. So that is one of the main gaps that we're also looking into. And finally, I'll also get to talk about critical minerals and renewable energy. The continent of Africa hosts reserves of global strategic minerals, and we look into cobalt, lithium, rare earths, and manganese, and that is what the International Energy Agency determines as the foundation of renewable energy. Kenya currently boasts of over 950 megawatts that has been ranked the 8th production of geothermal power, and that is being seen from the Great Rifts in Kenya. And this looks into production of electricity to over 40 to 50% of Kenya's electricity. And we also look into value addition when it comes to this field, and look into Australian governments can join forces with African nations on sustainable mining, value addition, and clean energy infrastructure, which can form part of the net zero transition for both continents. And I will quote this is quoted from International Energy Report in 2025. Thank you so much, honourable members.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make an opening statement?
Just to chime in
Yep.
on what my sisters mentioned, one of the largest culture shocks that I and many other Africans experience is the ability to survive on blue-collar work as a career, say in Australia, because at least in Kenya I can speak of, if you're not doing a white-collar job, the chances of you living decently are quite slim. So the TAFE mechanism, or the TAFE curriculum, is one that I think would work well, Australia teaching Kenya on how to impart skills and knowledge in matters education, to at least grow the population that was, I think we are about, more than 60% is below the age of 19. So these are the people graduating from high school, getting into the workplace that is non-existent. So to curb unemployment, curb crime, a good opportunity that we see is a TAFE way of doing things, and potentially building better people in the future.
Great. Did you want to make any opening comments?
Okay. So I was supposed to be doing the conclusion. So
Oh, that's okay. No, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. I just didn't want to leave you out. That's great. All right. So, Mr. Batt, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I can. That's fine. So, in relation to with your existing trade and investment, in the submission you talk about the diaspora businesses facing challenges accessing funding and export assistance. So can you expand on what those challenges are, and also how the Australian government could help with those challenges?
I'll give a personal submission.
Yeah, you're right.
I forget the name, but I thought it was Export Finance Australia, EFA. One of the Kenyan businesses from Queensland, actually, he was looking for finance to set up, and I believe it was a wind plant or a solar plant. He was very frustrated because he thought he would be able to secure financing from here. Although I did not know all personal details in the case, the specific matter, he did not give us all that, only got the overall overview. But he was contrasting himself with a peer who got financing to set up something similar, I believe, somewhere in Southeast Asia, who was able to secure financing. So overall, in his opinion, he thought it's biased towards a certain area that the federal government is channeling funding or assistance to. So how can we potentially bridge that? Neglecting his case, I guess it's just shining more spotlight onto this other side, seeing more what opportunities exist, listening to maybe DFAT in their presentations, and potentially channeling that into policy and angling it towards a different side.
So the feeling out in this is just general terms again, African community, is that funding that we do have available from Australia and government, particularly whether it's state or federal, is more towards Southeast Asian countries and businesses than it is towards African. Okay. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Newman.
I've got two questions. One that relates to us, and secondly, the next one relates to what we can do better. In your submission, the first one is that if you walk down Phillip Street here and you said to people, who is the biggest trading partner that Australia has on the African continent? I reckon most people, if they really thought, would probably say South Africa. But not many people, I reckon, would get Kenya as number two. And so what can we do to bring that awareness, to help you bring that awareness into Australia? Because the more, I mean, it's a bit like if I'm the son of an alcoholic, and you know, you've got to admit, you've got to know that you're an alcoholic before you can do something about it. You've got to know that we have a trade with Kenya, and it's so important. Before you actually can say, well, let's get into it. Let's really do even more. What can we do in Australia to bring that to the knowledge of people? And how can we help you here in New South Wales?
I think first there is lack of information about our cooperation between Australia and Kenya. We need to think towards joint programs, awareness programs between the Kenya people or the Kenya community and the Australia. Because as we are doing this report, we are trying to find the figures, the numbers. Most of it was a bit hard. So one of the things that we can do is that have joint programs of awareness. What is Australia thinking towards the year 2027, and what is Kenya thinking? Let's get a common ground, because we need to make the diaspora, especially here, more aware about the relation and the progress that we are planning to make. Because it's as if Australia is on this end, Kenya is on this end. There's no joint programs or trying any form of awareness between the two.
I think Phoebe was going to say something. She's
just to add on to what he said, I feel like Kenyans are new to Australia relatively as compared to South Africa, because South Africans migrated here way before we did, I could say that. But if you go to Africa, and East Africa to be specific, Kenya is a powerhouse. So back there, and just like he said, we feel like Australia is more binded to Southeast Asia. So we've been shying off, shying off from involving ourselves in some of these things. So we just started stepping into the limelight here. But back at home, with regards to renewable energy in East Africa, we're leaders as well in mobile money, like she mentioned, with the M-Pesa. And we're strong in renewable energy, geothermal in the Great Rift, and growing tech ecosystem. So South Africa, generally in Africa, is still a powerhouse, yes. But Kenya, I feel like, because we're presenting this to you, just take the risk, because it's worth it.
My second question is in lots of countries, if you're in Poland, for example, our ambassador then looks at Baltic states. Some of the Baltic states. If you're our ambassador in Sweden looks to some of the Baltic states as well. So they've got multiple. Same in France, our ambassador, that our embassy looks towards North Africa. We've been urged in this inquiry to increase our footprint. Now we can put high commissions or embassies in different places, but is that the best way to do it, or should we, for example, increase our footprint in Kenya and look at as Tony was saying, look at the different regions, and I think Frederick, you were sort of saying how important that is too. That look at upping our diplomatic footprint in South Africa, up our diplomatic footprint in Kenya, and then maybe Morocco, and so that we use those as the basis for involvement, because many of these countries have got asymmetric issues with us in terms of trade, whereas Kenya hasn't. So we increase the size of our footprint in Kenya. What do you think about that?
First, I acknowledge the fact that there has been less work done by the Kenyan government on our side too, and also by the Australian government, in giving more market knowledge to the Kenyan population here in diaspora and even back home on the opportunities available for Australia. Because currently we're just looking into education, that is for those who come to further their education. And recently is when we were aware that actually for those people who've gone to school, like they can come to Australia on skilled migration visa and work. I am one of them. Yeah. I am a high school teacher and I came through that route. So the only thing that Kenya currently is focusing on is the education and the skill migration. But what are we doing to look into in terms of business? We need to have more intensified government-to-government negotiations. And there was a memorandum that was done in 2023, and the details of the memorandum have been so, I will say, not explicit. And if you ask me today what was in there or what was written, it has not been made public. And so far, we've not seen the progress that has been done. We've not been given the timeframes and what needs to be done in each and every step. So this makes the Kenyan population to step back and have a bit of mistrust in terms of the relationship that exists between Australia and Kenya, and just focus on the two main things we're looking into, apart from the manufactured goods exports.
That's a good answer to my previous question, but my question is...
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good. I'm glad you said it. It was really good. Really good.
Yeah.
But the point that I think Frederick was making, and I think Tony asked a really great question before, and we've been urged to think about the idea that we put embassies here, embassies there, but that might not be as effective. It might be that we've got, we do well in Kenya and we can do better. We do well in South Africa and we can do better. We do well in Morocco and we can do better. You see what I'm saying? That we could use countries like Kenya to leverage those business opportunities better, rather than plonking embassies everywhere all over the place. We've got 9 currently, high commissions and embassies. Perhaps we increase out the size of footprint of those ones.
Just to answer your first and second question. The first one is, say you're walking down the street and ask Australia's trading partners, 9 out of 10 people say South Africa, the others maybe Kenya. The likelihood of them saying Kenya is a safari destination or tourist destination, I think is a plus.
Yeah.
And I'd say in terms of information dissemination, it's easier for me to start a conversation with you when you've already agreed that Kenya is a tourist destination, then I can add on to that. So not fighting the tide, not even reinventing the wheel, just going on with whatever is happening. We'll just be a passenger in the same bus. If you understand at least one point, we're able to introduce other concepts on the same area or the same geographical region, pegged on that. And yes, the point of adding high commissioners and all these chancelleries and councils, empowering them also is important. You can increase to 54, every country has one, but then if they're just satellite offices, then they're literally not serve much purpose. But one of the statements she mentioned is, with the various economic sectors, you've got various trading hubs, at least that exist in Kenya. So the techies have one, software engineers have one, mechanical engineers have one, pilots have one. I think establishing links with those small hubs, again, this is only specific to Kenya, not only in our country, specific links with the hubs, which tend to operate a formal structure, but in a very informalized way. They tend to tap into the local community better than a Chamber of Commerce, for example. Chamber of Commerce, in my opinion, are people who wear suits and can afford big boardrooms, whereas the hubs tend to meet out in the streets, out in small restaurants and pubs and the like. And those are the people you find on the ground at the time. So even if you're looking to do a survey, their responses would make more sense in contrast to the fellas who are able to buckle up and put on ties and suits.
Okay.
So I think in establishing the rapport, might make for more effort, but with what the chair mentioned here of the Center for Kenya-Australian Relations, we're trying to tap into those smaller networks, the more informal networks, aggregate them in a sort of database so that we're able to reach out to them both from Australia and from Kenya, and at least present this, if it's a federal government inquiry, if it's a state government inquiry, see how you can use these networks to grow relations between trade and investment across the two.
Ms. Cothram. Thank you. Thanks, Chair. You talked about TAFE as a model for education before. I just have two questions. Firstly, what are the critical industries, in your view, and just leaving it at Kenya, not the entire African continent, that are needed? So is it building and construction? Is it nursing, higher education, early childhood education? What are the critical industries? And then secondly, how easy is it, or what is the ease of doing business in Kenya? So if I'm a TAFE, can I set up in Kenya easily? Is there a curriculum authority? What licensing barriers are there? Is there a requirement for a certain number of Kenyan nationals to be instructors within the TAFE? How does it work in that respect?
We're an agricultural economy, but with a service sector that contributes a greater share to the GDP. Service in the sense of banking, insurance, hotels, and the like. Australian government has programs that support agriculture in Kenya that are doing quite well. Agriculture and health are doing well. So I'd say if it's sector specific, I'd look into agriculture, health, and nowadays we tend to eat a lot. So the cold storages, and we have a lot of food that's going bad. And in my opinion, with the little data that we do get, those three would be the top categories.
Okay.
Ease of doing business. I mean, if you refer to the World Bank's index, I think we'd probably be around mid-table. So in about 100 and something countries, probably be around 40, 50, if I'm not wrong, but we can always confirm on that. But you don't need any Kenyan participation to set up shop in those three sectors. If it becomes more critical, like energy, defense, then yes, you need some Kenyan involvement in there. You're able to set up a company, even from here, set up a company there, register online. So the ease of doing business, I think, is a bit better, at least in contrast to peers. Then a TAFE setting up shop, because it's an institution of higher learning. I guess besides the capital, I don't think you'll be finding capital there to set up financial capital at least. But at least the labor you will find for sure. How hard will it be for you to set up? If you've got your business plan, you're ready with your financing, I'd say 3 out of 10 in terms of 3 being hard and 10 being easy. So it'll probably be close to this other side if you're in terms of challenges for setting up.
Okay.
On the same, I think on establishing TAFE, the principal secretary in charge of TVET, the equivalent of TAFE here, was here last year. And they are trying to partner with private institutions, but I'm sure they'll be open to have joint programs, because they went to a number of TAFEs here. They went to Newcastle and they went to Melbourne, and they are trying to partner with Australia. So if they can get a government-to-government program, I think they'll be much open towards that. Because they went across Australia trying to study how the TVET operates here, your programs, your curriculum, and they want to have almost a similar curriculum, the Australia one and the Kenya one.
Yeah.
So if they can get a chance to sit with the government here, I believe they'll be open to have almost the same curriculum. Because they were here, but they were unable to get audience with the government. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, to add on that, I'll just give lived experience. we have relations between Kenya and China, and we've seen the Chinese government having the Confucius Institute of Learning in major universities, meaning that if you want to study more while wanting to learn different things being offered in China, you do not have to travel to China. You can just study it back in Kenya, and this has been done through government to government, institution to institution agreement. It has also been done by major agricultural institutions in Philippines, in Israel, together with the Kenyan institutions. So that is one thing Australia can look into, and it will make it a bit easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, we'll go to Senator Collins.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of quick questions, and the first is on Austrade. There's an office in Kenya, but have you had much experience with that office?
I know it exists. I've never dealt with them. I've never had any business to take me there, but I do know it exists.
Okay. Is it particularly active? Do you know if you would be able to contact it if you wanted to go and sit down with them, or any contacts that you had?
I'll ask around, and I'll give that feedback back to the committee.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chebet-Motwal, you mentioned before about M-Pesa, and for small businesses doing trade across countries, it's, you know, that mobile money transfer is hugely important. A few questions on that. Firstly, on average, how much, are you aware of how much it costs to send money home at the moment for remittances? You know, you're talking sort of 5%, 10%? 8%. 8% of the exchange? And that's usually over a digital transfer?
Yeah.
Okay. And with the with M-Pesa, and you know, you mentioned that you just have to have a bank account. Is there a tiered risk structure with that? So, you know, there's a lot of people unbanked in the region, in across Africa, but you know, have they made it easier for people to get into bank accounts? So they've got a lower risk structure with that?
You don't need to have a bank account. So that means that all you need is your ID, register your line, your telecommunication line, and that's it. So the money is transferred wired directly to your line, not to your bank account. You don't need a bank account. And this has worked greatly in seeing the small business people do so well. And it also allows you to save money. It has a bit of a structure almost similar to a bank, but now what we call it is pesa mkononi, meaning that money in your hand that you can travel with it. I have the app in my phone, and I can send money directly home without having to wait for a long time together with other providers. And how this gets to work and how it makes it better for that young business person is that someone earning less than $1 a day can use that to transact. And someone also getting over $1,000 to $600, $700 $5,000 can still use the same platform to transact money. How this gets to work is that it encourages that young person or that person who is living below the dollar line to be able to save and even track their own ways of saving. And they can use their statement, the M-Pesa statement, akin to bank statement, to even ask for a loan and go ahead into doing business. So it is a whole model that has been able to cater for, especially women. We have markets, yes, but we have women who sell groceries along the roadside and everything. And that is what we use. And one of the culture shocks I got when I got here is cards all over. And yet I was used to just having just my phone. And when I need to pay, Matt, you need something? Yes. You sold this to me? Yes. How much? $10. Pay. And you're done instantly. Yeah.
So the money generally stays in the digital wallet. And so Kenya is sort of moving from a cash-based society to digital now. That's remarkable.
Yeah, it started 25 years ago?
Yeah. 25 years ago?
Yeah, 25 years ago.
So you don't use the sort of QR code system, it's just phone number to phone number.
Yeah, phone number to phone number.
And if you wanted to draw that money out, how do you do that through, how do you do that?
There are agents. M-Pesa agents, and also you can withdraw via bank, via ATMs. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can access banks with your ATM. It just asks you to, and if you want to link it also with your bank account, then you can. There are codes that that you, not even codes, it's called pay bill. It's a whole system that once you key in the number and also your account number, you are able to send money directly to your bank account, and you can withdraw money from your bank account at the ATM into your M-Pesa number. So the M-Pesa number is just the same way you have your number here in Australia, the phone, the cell number is the same cell number you'll have in Kenya that you will use to transact money. Yeah.
Okay. The people earning less than $1 a day that you mentioned, how long have they been on the system?
Pardon?
You mentioned the people earning less than $1 a day using this system, the M-Pesa system. How long have they been on the system? How long has it been?
As soon as you turn 18 years old.
No, but like for how many years have they, has this sort of technology been available? How long have they been using it? Phones can be an expensive product to buy initially. So I'm just wondering, we have a huge issue across, the other side of the region for Australia and the Pacific, in that we are trying to get people across to digital platforms, such a huge part of small business. If you're trying to build a trade here in Australia, it's important to understand the technology behind it, how to get that money moving and get it moving cheaply, so that trade, you can maximise benefits from that trade. So I'm just trying to understand, I guess, how it was born in Kenya and how long, you've had the system for.
We've had this system for 26 years.
Yep.
And you don't need a smartphone to do that too.
Okay, so...
Yeah, you don't need a smartphone. So there are phones available that cost less than $100, actually $50, and you have one. And once you have that, you can still operate the M-Pesa line without having a smartphone, without internet. You can still do transaction anywhere. So those are among the issues that Fred can add in.
So M-Pesa is a neobank.
A new bank.
A neobank, N-E-O, yeah?
Yep.
Neobank, yeah? So maybe to bring it closer to home, try imagine your post offices in each and every rural entity, but imagine a post office on your hand. So with M-Pesa, what she's mentioning, that you can use it on a dumb phone, the old phones. The techies will tell you could use an USSD code. You don't need the internet. All you need is your SIM card that's powered. So that SIM card is what is relaying signals from the sender to the receiver. But then, yes, you can have a smartphone. Now they come with apps. You use all the internet that's available. Safaricom, the parent company of M-Pesa, although M-Pesa itself has a bit of a murky past or start. Some say it was a uni students project that was taken up by Vodafone. Vodafone was a parent company of Safaricom, Vodafone, the British company, and paid him a little bit and then rolled it out large scale across Kenya, India, and all these other countries. But to avoid that part, it exists, and I know it exists, but just to mention it, so how it rolled out a lot in Kenya. Kenya started fiber optics from the node to the home in 2007. I remember during former Prime Minister's time, Malcolm Turnbull, there was a mention in Parliament, and he was asked to speak on internet speeds between Kenya and Australia. So the whole country was connected, and very many people are able to get phones. Not your expensive iPhones, but the phones she's talking about for less than $30, $40. Yep. Now with the phone, on the front end, you only need your SIM card, your mobile number, and you have a bank account. On the back end, there's a bank that actually powers this with the teleco. So the teleco has links to the back end with various banks. So these accounts are held in these banks. Now when M-Pesa was rolling out about 2009, 2010, the central bank did not really understand what was happening. It's only when M-Pesa became, I believe, 60 or 70% of the country's GDP that now central banks are paying attention. So now these accounts are very secured, like your typical bank accounts. So again, you go to your post office where you can deposit money into your bank account. The post office has a link to your bank account, and your money is actually reflected. You want to withdraw? Again, post office will talk to your bank, withdraw the money, your account is debited. Similar process, but just on your phone. And that is M-Pesa for you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. I've probably run over my time, but I appreciate it.
That's okay. Look, we're coming up to the close, but I just thought if you'd like to make some closing remarks. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We might go. We'll go to Ms. Jarrett.
Yep.
Yeah, online. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. You mentioned in your opening remarks the opportunities in relation to digital and cyber security, and we've just had a long discussion around digital payments. looking beyond digital payments, and I'm thinking maybe more in the cybersecurity space, but also in just technology development, what are the opportunities there for Australia to support African markets? And I'm thinking, I know you can comment on Kenya. Can you also comment on any other markets? And I'm looking to understand, is it everything from infrastructure development through to skills, through to service provision, etc.?
Maybe I'll chime in from my background. I'm a stockbroker by trade. I do a lot on the ASX. I find that access of financial capital is a bit easier here than it is in Kenya. And the churning of talent, say within the tech space, is a bit faster and easier in Kenya. So I think there's an opportunity for us to find financing through the ASX to finance local projects there, like M-Pesa, bring them onto the ASX and commercialize them. The reason I say so is many of the projects that come through will either find themselves in the UK or in America. Australia still is not one of the main countries that fellas would be looking to target. So I think that's one of the places I find an opportunity for Australia to potentially exploit. I personally, I'm trying one, have not been successful, but when I do, maybe I'll announce it to the committee at due time. Yeah.
Okay, well, we might now, I think you wanted to make some closing remarks, is that right? Yep, go ahead.
So just to sum everything up, I was supposed to be discussing case examples to just give you context. And the most prominent ones I found was on South America and Asia. So I'll start with South America. There's Mercosur. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. MERCOSUR. So that's a coalition between Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. So this is just to show you that at the moment and sitting in this room, like just as he mentioned, investing in Kenya seems like quite a long shot, quite a far shot to take. But South America was once considered risky as well, considering Argentina's rivalry with Brazil before they set their differences aside and said we have more to benefit if we just come together and come up with this. So this is to comment on the similarity between that and ACFCTA as well, which is the regional trade bloc for Africa. And it just shows that if we work that way on our ends, formulate policies, and set everything aside, and also with your help, like he said, try and give us more of your physical presence as Australia in Kenya. On our end, we'll be able to also formulate policies that will help us work together and make the dream come true, and we can all just mutually benefit from it. Also, another far shot which Australia made and it came to prosper was Vietnam. So I understand that Australia has some partnerships with Vietnam as well. So just in the same way, Kenya at the moment is very fresh, like we said. We're just trying to put ourselves out there. And this meeting is just the perfect example. So we'll be able to just take it back home and communicate with people back in our embassy and just basically everything that diplomacy stands for. So we just be able to do all that together and we'll make the dream come true. And just urging you guys, same way South Africa is a powerhouse there, like he said, and Morocco is a powerhouse in North Africa. Kenya is a powerhouse in East Africa, and you will not be disappointed. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. If you have been asked to provide any additional information, please forward it to the Secretariat by Thursday, the 28th of May, 2026. Please note that responses to questions on notice will be published on the website as submissions to the inquiry. You will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to assist you with answering any questions taken on notice today, and you will have an opportunity to request corrections to any transcription errors. I now suspend the subcommittee's public hearing. hearing for its inquiry into strengthening Australia's trade and investment relations with Africa. This hearing will be broadcast on the Parliament's website, and the proof and official transcripts of the proceedings will be published on the committee's website. I now welcome the representative from Food Markies and Multicultural Food Hub to give evidence today. For the Hansard record, would you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before the Trade Subcommittee?
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is Elizabeth Akinsonia, as you've rightly mentioned, the founder of the Multicultural Food Hub Australia.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
This hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. I'll now give members an opportunity to briefly introduce themselves.
Yes, Jess Collins, Senator for New South Wales.
Tony Zapier, member for Macon in South Australia.
Fiona Phillips, Federal Member for Gilmore on the New South Wales South Coast.
Claire Clatterham, Federal Member for Sturt in Adelaide, South Australia.
David Butt, member for Hinkler in regional Queensland.
And joining us online, we have
Sam Lim, member for Tangi from WA.
And Madonna
nice
Jarrett.
to meet you all.
Madonna Jarrett, member for Brisbane.
Great, thank you.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Akinsonia. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement before we proceed to discussion.
All right. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Australia has opportunity with Africa, but this is not only in finding new markets. It's more about building trusted pathways into those markets. If we are looking at the African market, we've got a lot of opportunities that Australia can leverage with the right pathways. Today, using Nigeria as a reference point, I will outline practical sectors where Australia can pursue commercially sound, long-term, mutually beneficial trade and investment relationships with Australia. I will also highlight how African Australian diaspora communities can serve as trusted bridges for market entry, risk reduction, and durable commercial relationships with Africa. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. So I'll just start with a general question. Your submission notes Australia's existing trade focus fails to reflect the diversity of modern emerging economies in Africa. Can you please provide the subcommittee an overview of these modern economies and opportunities to align with Africa's projected demographic shifts?
Beautiful. So in Africa right now, the modern or emerging economy that we're seeing is actually coming from 6 sectors which I have identified. There may be more than that, but for today, I have identified 6 of them. And one would be from the creative economy sector. The other would be in technology, especially fintech. And we have the educational sector. We have the agricultural sector as well, specifically the meat and dairy sector. And then we also have the healthcare sector.
Great.
And yeah. Okay, I was just about to continue on that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Right,
Go
so
ahead.
If you look at, okay. I'm getting a lot of echo from my end. All right, so if you look at the African population at the moment, using Nigeria as a typical example, in Nigeria at the moment, we have about 240 population, 70% of them being made of the youth population who are growing and are currently requiring things from the educational sector, the agricultural and dairy sector, the IT sector as well, and also the healthcare sector. Sorry, if I could just, can I just redial in? I'm hearing a lot of echo from my end, and it's a bit distracting. If that will be okay.
We'll just suspend for a few moments. The public hearing. If you could continue, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Could you please take the question again?
So the question was, so we're talking about the diversity of modern emerging economies in Africa. So you were talking about that, and the question was, can you provide the subcommittee of an overview of these modern economies and opportunities to align with Africa's projected demographic shifts?
All right. Just one moment, just aligning my phone. Okay, so currently I'm using Nigeria as a case study because Africa is a big continent and there's so many countries. However, we can take the case study from Nigeria and also look at how to apply in other African countries. So looking at Nigeria, at the moment, we have a population of about 240. 70% of this population is made up of the growing youth population, the workforce, who are very IT savvy, who are seriously looking for how to grow the economy, how to make Nigeria like a better place and all that. And if you look at from these diverse groups, there are a lot of emerging opportunities. One in the agricultural sector, which is in terms of sustenance and food. In our agricultural sector, for example, if you take meat and dairy, for instance, the meat and dairy sector is a sector that is grossly underproductive, and we've got a lot of importation of milk, which is where Australia has its own strength. If you look at the Australian agricultural system, climate, it's quite similar to that of Nigeria, and Australia has already has great strength in the area of arid production of meat and dairy in arid climate economy. In arid regions, basically. So for that, it gives Australia a lot of opportunities to create that investment in Nigeria when it comes to arid farming, cattle farming, and all that. And right now, over 70% of dairy products are imported into Nigeria as we speak. And most of those dairy products are not made from real milk. Many of them are made from filled milk or what you call the instant milk, and are vegetable based. This is a very big opportunity for Australia because if you look at the growing population, and if Australia is able to embed itself in the things that are like the basic needs, like of Australia, of Nigerians, and invest in it, you find that it brings a high rate of return when it comes to that investment. Another area that we could be looking at is in the area of education. A lot of Nigerians, and I'll say by extension, Africans value education, but then our educational system right now is grossly, is grossly overused, and it's not serving the population And that's why you find out that a lot of us, we go out, to find that quality education that we need, because right now about 2 million students would graduate or would leave high school, and just about 370 of them, 370,000, will gain admission. So that's to tell you that there is a wide gap in education. And one of the ways Australia can leverage this opportunity is to collaborate with local universities to establish something like a TAFE-like system. Personally, I have attended TAFE, and I found out that the practical approach, the industry-focused approach, is something that is going to be very useful for the Nigerian educational system. So if Australia is able to leverage this and, establish something like that, more or less like a regional kind of hub where most Nigerians who require that education, rather than going to places like China, going to places like UK, going to places like the US, they can just have their study right there at home, and other African countries as well can come in to have, their study, and that bridges that massive gap. And I'll need you to know, which I think you already know, that any system that educates has the potential for influence when it comes to decision making later, because the graduates and people who have passed through that system will become like assets eventually who would be influencing decisions. And of course, we always remember the system that got them to where they are. So that's that for education. Then when it comes to the healthcare system of Nigeria is very, very overwhelmed at the moment. The infrastructure is not catching up with the population explosion at the moment. And even though the country is doing a lot to get itself up to speed in terms of the healthcare system, I believe the type of healthcare system that is run in Australia can highly benefit like African countries, using Nigeria as a case study. And in what ways can, that benefit be harnessed? So I'll pick some examples which I have noted here. Just one moment. Yeah, so for example, when it comes to systems efficiency, when it comes to diagnostics capacity, infrastructure, in the healthcare system, transfer of knowledge, education, those are areas that Australia is already very strong, and these are places that Nigeria also needs that investment. And if you look at the amount of money that Nigerians on the average spend and Africans on health tourism, it's huge. But if Australia partners with Nigeria and have like that regional kind of system where it exports its health services into the country and distributes from there. So when I mean distribute from there, so what I mean is people from other African countries, apart from even Nigerians, can use those healthcare kind of systems. And that becomes like a lot more profitable for Australia, as well as a source of huge impact on the African continent. And there, Australia can even build its soft power when it comes to the services it has provided. So if you look at countries like China, they succeeded in embedding their services, in some aspect of the economy. Take, for example, in our port systems, in our rail systems, transportation systems, and all that. And gradually they are beginning to gain that influence, even in terms of language transfer and all that. I believe Australia has proven systems that can be exported into the African continent and that can give it leverage in the international market. Another aspect that we would look at is in the IT sector, that's in the information technology sector. At the moment, the countries like the US, the UK, already have some of their tech giants partnering with local companies in Nigeria to outsource or co-produce products which is also giving them leverage, to be competitive at the international market. But if you look at Australia, Australia has very great products, but one of the challenges we have is high cost of labor. But then we are competing in an international market where other countries are also able to, either co-produce their products offshore to make it like more accessible to people. And where there is that market competitiveness, there is need for strategic moves. So if Australia is able to partner with African countries who have already succeeded at producing or co-producing IT products, digital products for countries like the US, UK, and the companies like Google, Meta, and the likes of them, it can also have that leverage to be internationally competitive without having to worry too much about the pricing and all that.
All right.
I don't know if you have any questions for me from this point.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
I might move on to Mr. Batt. Do you have a question?
Well, I will have one. You've answered most of them. You've done very well with a lot of your information that I had. Yeah, you've done very well. But so in relation to you talk about the 4 different areas, creative industries, healthcare, and you mentioned healthcare there, and specifically in Nigeria. So, is there opportunities for Australia to engage in trade exports across other African countries as well, or is it more Nigeria is your focus for all of this? And if so, how can we do better in those areas of healthcare?
Yeah, there are big opportunities for Australia to trade with other parts of Africa. So the use of Nigeria as a case study is just to tell you the scale of opportunities that are also available if you translate that into 53 other countries. Even though Nigeria is like one of the largest economies, and then the population size in Africa, West Africa. Yeah, so when it comes to the healthcare sector, sorry, could you repeat your question on the healthcare sector?
It's just you specifically talked about Nigeria. I just thought, is it the same for other in general African nations as well when you talk about healthcare?
Yeah. So when it comes to the healthcare sector, like I did mention earlier on, the systems are already overwhelmed and they need to be modernized. And that is where I see an opportunity for Australia to come in terms of the quality kind of assurance, the diagnostic systems, the way the primary healthcare sector works. For example, our public hospitals are seriously overwhelmed. They're not able to cope with what is available with the level of demand on them. So demand at the moment outshines supply when it comes to the African healthcare system. And those are places that Australian local, businesses or the Australian government can partner with African countries to deliver that healthcare that is required, what they go out, for to get treatment and all that. So, and one of the bridges that I see here is the African in diaspora. And those are already in Australia. Some of the medical experts here who are Africans, they understand the local system, they understand the Australian system, how it works, and they can translate between both worlds, basically, and make sure that whatever investment Australia is making in Africa is de-risked, because one of the deterrents for investing in Africa has always been the perceived sense of high risk and not understanding the culture and everything like that. But with those Africans who are Australians, they can take those investments and translate them into opportunities back home and also get returns for Australia. So I see these sectors, which I have highlighted, as high growth areas that will continue to grow with the African economy. and will also bring growth in Australian investment in Africa.
So if I just follow on from that then, just from what you're saying though, so if you've got the diaspora, African diaspora people, like people in Australia now that you're talking about that could have that information back from Africa that you need to work there and to fund in there, what's stopping them from doing that now? Why aren't Africans that are in Australia going back to Africa and taking their businesses back there?
Okay, beautiful question. So the thing is, putting investment into Africa, there is a need huge for a capital outlay, basically. And some of the Africans here who are already running their business may not have that capacity in terms of investment, capital injection. So if you look at China, for example, what it does, it backs up its entrepreneurs to go out into other countries, to invest. And once it does that, it gives them, for example, things like loan or grants and all that. They do the investment and the return comes back to China. Why is China doing that? It's because most of those entrepreneurs may not have the financial capacity to carry out those huge capital investments, even though they've got the skills and everything to make those investments happen. So yes, Africans here can definitely take investment back home. However, the capital outlay that some of those investments might require may not be available to them. And that's why it's important for Australia to create trade pathways, to create investment pathways through the African diaspora to make those things happen.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Ms. Clodrum.
Thank you. I just have a question about the creative industries sector that you've identified. I think you're the first person who we've heard in this inquiry giving evidence who has identified this as a potential industry. What would it look like from a trade perspective? And given the heavy focus on, I guess, digital within creative industries, what are the barriers that currently exist between Australia and the African continent in respect of this industry? As it would seem to me that because it does have a heavy focus on digital, that the barriers might be significantly less compared to other industries like agriculture, mining and healthcare.
Right. Thank you for that. So one of the barriers or some of the barriers that exist from the local intelligence gathering I made was most of the Nigerian creative industry, they have little awareness about the Australian market, basically, and they consider like the US market, the UK market to be like a lot bigger. And from part of my discussions with them, I found that some of them think, one, Australia is a very distant land and might not have as much opportunities for them, which of course is not true. So that's one is a barrier, it's part of the barriers that we see. And on the other hand as well, when it comes to the Australian side of things, sorry, just a minute. So when it comes to the Australian side of things, we have had like cultural events and all that have seen, different artists come into Nigeria. But some of the troubles they may have could come to be around the visa, having that pathway for collaboration between both, from artists from both worlds, basically, to collaborate and co-create content or music production and all that. So, excuse me. One of the ways that I think Australia can strengthen or remove those barriers is to create opportunities for, one, festival partnership, basically, events and touring markets for both the African continent, and then on the other side, Australia going that way to the African continent, and African artists also coming here to co-produce with the Australian market. But when it comes to the local industry, if you're looking at investment that Australia can leverage, you will be looking at infrastructure when it comes to the music industry. And I'll give you an example. In the Nigerian industry, the industry has grown a lot beyond what was expected. And because of that, the infrastructure that supports things like cultural events, that supports the mega infrastructure that supports those things, are currently not available. So even though like African artists, they consistently, outsell in mega venues and all that overseas, they're not able to do that at home. And that's because those infrastructure are not currently available due to the rapid growth of that industry. So one of the places Australia can embed itself in the growth of the creative industry in Nigeria would be in the investment in big or mega infrastructure that could that supports music tourism in Nigeria and other parts of Africa.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Great. All right. We might leave it there. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for your time today. I don't think we've got any additional questions on notice, but just in case, if you've been asked to provide any additional information, please forward it to the Secretariat by Thursday, the 28th of May 2026. Please note that responses to questions on notice will be published on the website as submissions to the inquiry. You will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to assist you with answering any questions taken on notice today, and you will have an opportunity to request corrections to any transcription errors. So thank you very much, and I'm now suspending the hearing. Now resume the public hearing. I now welcome the representative from the Export Council of Australia to give evidence today. For the Hansard record, would you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before the Trade Subcommittee?
My name is Arnold Jorge. I'm the CEO of the Export Council of Australia. So I'm here on behalf of the Export Council of Australia.
Great, thank you. This hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. I now invite you to make... Oh, actually, before that, we should introduce the members. Yep.
First Collins, Senator for New South Wales.
Tony Zappia, member for Macon, South Australia.
Shane Newman, federal member for Blair in Queensland, Ipswich.
Fiona Phillips, a federal member for Gilmore on the New South Wales South Coast.
Claire Clutterham, federal member for Sturt in Adelaide, South Australia.
David Butt, I'm the federal member for Hinkler in regional Queensland.
And online we have...
Madonna Jarrett, member for Brisbane.
Sam Lim, member for Tangney from WA.
Thank you. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement before we proceed to discussion.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for the opportunity to appear today. The ECA is Australia's peak body for trade and export capability. For more than 60 years, we have promoted trade and investment, supporting Australia's businesses through advocacy, training, market research, regulatory navigation by facilitating ecosystem building and partnerships across global markets. We work collaboratively with stakeholders, including exporters, investors, governments, and industry partners, all with the aim of strengthening Australia's international economic engagement. I want to note at the outset that my remarks today will focus on non-mining sectors, as other organizations are better placed to address those issues. Australia's engagement with Africa now offers a strategic opportunity. As the world moves from crisis to crisis, our economic resilience depends on diversification. That is diversification of markets, supply chains, partnerships, and ideas. In that context, deeper engagement with African economies is not only commercially sensible, it may in time prove to be a stabilizer of trusted relationships in an increasingly fragmented global environment. Africa is home to some of the fastest growing economies, a young and dynamic population, and governments actively seeking new industrial, agricultural, health, and energy partnerships. Countries such as Ghana and Zimbabwe are pursuing reform agendas and regional integration through the African Continental Free Trade Area, creating opportunities for businesses who are willing to invest, localize, and collaborate. But to seize these opportunities, we need to be honest about the limits of the traditional model of make it here and ship it there. That model is under pressure. Shipping costs have risen sharply, long-haul freight is increasingly unpredictable, and Australia's tyranny of distance puts us at a competitive disadvantage when we rely solely on exporting finished goods. Border processes in some markets can also introduce friction, delays, and corruption, risks that add cost to Australian businesses. That is why a much more strategic approach, one based on co-investment, joint ventures, licensing, co-production, and in-market assembly makes sense. These models reduce freight exposure, build local capability, and align with African governments' industrialization priorities. There is also a real opportunity for Australia to work with African partners on aligning standards and improving interoperability, whether that's in food, digital trade, customs processes, or cross-border paperwork. As the African Continental Free Trade Area takes shape, countries are looking for partners who can help them modernize systems, reduce friction at the border, and build trusted, transparent processes. For Australian businesses, this matters. The more aligned and interoperable the systems are, the lower the risk of delays, informal payments, or inconsistent documentation. Standards cooperation is not just technical work, it is a market-shaping work. It can make Australian investment in co-production models far more viable and certainly facilitates trade. We recognize that Africa is not one market, it is a continent of multiple cultures, regulatory environments, and business practices. But it is also a set of interconnected systems at a regional level. It is important to note that while you might enter each market individually, you can do so with an eye on the regional community created by the African Continental Free Trade Area and blocs such as the Economic Community of West African States, South African Development Community, and the East African Community. In other words, enter locally, scale regionally. There are a number of sectors where Australia can make meaningful, mutually beneficial contribution. That would be in the sectors of agri-food, agri-tech specifically, health and pharmaceuticals, mining equipment, technology and services, green technology, and professional services. I wanted to highlight also the enormous asset we already have here at home, the African diaspora in Australia. These communities bring language skills, cultural knowledge, business networks, and lived experience that can dramatically accelerate commercial engagement. They are underutilized bridge between our economies, and any national strategy should recognize and empower them. I look forward to discussing how Australia can take more strategic, partnership-driven approach to Africa, one that recognizes our complementarities, supports well-considered investment models, and strengthens our economic resilience for decades ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for that. My first question is, do you have any recommendations on how the Australian government can support Australian businesses to diversify trade and investment opportunities and really navigate some of those complexities and risks across the African markets?
Three immediate initiatives come to mind. One is that we still need to do a lot of awareness raising here within Australia of the opportunities in Africa. we need to highlight that what we normally see on TV and in the general media, it doesn't explain fully the climate, the economic prospects that exist in Africa, which is a lot more positive. A lot of reforms are taking place. A lot of those economies are modernizing. So those awareness raising can occur through roundtable discussions. We have, the Export Council of Australia have actually done some of these types of roundtable discussions, but not for Africa, but for South America. We've seen how effective it can be. Second is that the government perhaps should allocate some support for African delegations to actually come to Australia. Not so much the traditional of us sponsoring Australian businesses to go there. We think it's much more effective to actually support African delegates to come, decision makers to come to Australia. And once they get to see the Australian capability, the relationship building occurs much faster. They will see what value adding Australia can bring to the African economies. The third one is, again, in support of the diaspora. Most of the diaspora certainly tend to, when they have immigrated to Australia, tend to focus very much on pursuing professional careers. They look for jobs in terms of being an employee, and most of them tend to be in the professional space. In fact, we actually need to actually build capabilities in terms of trade. In fact, a number of some of these communities have actually reached out to us that because some are struggling to find jobs. So instead of finding jobs, they're thinking of actually setting up their own businesses. So any training and support in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of trade, we think would tap into the resources there in terms of that diaspora.
Thank you very much. I might go to Mr. Bath.
I can do one. It's happy to chair. Started off anyway. So, just in relation to African specific, what does Export Council Australia do in providing for members to support moving it into Africa? Like you talked about export growth hub, is that it, or is there other things that you're helping them with?
So, in fact, we just started in terms of setting up an export growth hub. I'm not quite sure if you're referring to the export growth hub that we have on our website. We wanted to bring together some of the key trade services that actually would support Australian exporters to make it easier for them to know who to speak with and that they can tap into these organizations with a level of trust that we have gone through some form of verification. So that is available to everyone, no matter what market they're pursuing. We haven't done much at all, to be honest, in the context of Africa at this stage. We have been speaking to a number of the ambassadors, the African ambassadors that are based in Canberra, and they have approached us with a view to certainly increasing the awareness again of the opportunities in Africa, but also for them to get to meet Australian exporters and businesses. So we haven't done that yet. Our intention is to certainly do that, is to co-host roundtable discussions where we would bring Australian businesses in front of some of these ambassadors so that they get to meet them. One thing I did want to stress is that if we are going to do anything with Africa in any serious way, we have to look beyond the mining sector. And that means we need to reach out to other industries. Certainly we would, in terms of those kind of roundtables, we would like to invite people in the tech space, green tech, for example, including potentially in terms of microgrids, solar providers, and then even water purification businesses. And then we would also look at agri-tech. Africa is certainly growing a lot of farms in key products, However, they feel that they can still gain value in terms of the technology and the processes that Australia certainly are much more advanced in terms of those knowledge. We don't think it's going to be competitive, a competitive issue. If anything, there's potential there for co-investment, which ultimately may prove to be beneficial for Australia.
And you mentioned there, haven't done much at all in Africa. That was the word you said, and that's what we're hearing from all of a lot of our African communities that are in here, and also from the countries that we've spoken with. And not itself, like that's Australian government as well, and other government. And can you tell us, in your reasons, why we've taken or don't have a focus on Africa at the moment? Like a lot of them seem to think it's Southeast Asia where we're doing a lot more trade and focus on.
In one sense, the situation that we're faced with right now is understandable. For a lot of exporters, they tend to look at markets that are closer to home, markets that they're much more familiar with. So in that context, that is in fact also driven our focus for a lot of our members who are engaged with China, with Southeast Asia. So a lot of our efforts, limited resources, again, that is a challenge faced by many. So the issue that we find now, however, is that, as I mentioned, we're going from one crisis to another. The reality is that for a lot of businesses, and again, we're supportive of government efforts in the context of diversification. So we are encouraging businesses to look at other markets. And we feel that looking at other markets will allow us to address any potential risk in the future. Of course, we don't know what we don't know right now, but there's an opportunity there also in the sense that if we're smart enough and think much more strategically, we could expand without actually necessarily having to face the same issues, as I mentioned earlier, in the context, for example, of shipping. So if we actually think about exporting, not just simply about making something here and then putting it on a ship, but actually think about licensing, for example, or co-investments, joint ventures, there's an opportunity for Australia to actually be present on the ground in a lot of these markets and certainly gain some revenue from that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Bucket and Mrs. Appiah. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Jorge, thank you very much for your presentation. And just taking up that very last point, can you provide any examples of whether there have been joint ventures or co-investments that have been successful? In Africa?
In Africa?
Yeah, by Australian companies.
I am aware of, I won't mention a specific company name, where they have established a manufacturing center in Africa, in South Africa specifically. And this is a firm that manufactures equipment that processes food.
Right.
And in fact, their presence there actually allowed them to support multinational companies that are actually gone to Africa to process food.
Right.
So it's interesting. One would not have thought that Australia actually makes machinery that actually helps process food, and we brought it to South Africa, and multinationals, including from the United States, actually go and have purchased that machinery. And because of that, they are certainly expanding not just in South Africa, but operating for the rest of Africa.
Okay, and that was private company to private company?
Yes.
Rather than, for example, one of the African countries' governments doing a co-investment?
No, that's purely private. Yes.
Purely private?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you for that.
Mr. Newman.
Your evidence is really good today, and you haven't given us a written submission. Can I encourage you to think about giving us a written submission, because it would really be helpful to us. The second thing I was going to say is you put an emphasis on bringing people, companies and individuals to Australia from Africa, various countries there. But to use your words, you talked about recognising and empowering the diaspora in Australia. So I'm just interested in any recommendations that you can give to us about how we recognise and empower the diaspora in Australia. There are 500,000 people from various African countries in Australia, and honestly, I guarantee you most of the Australians don't recognise that, okay? So I'm just really, I just want to, except if they're on an AFL field or running in a track for Ipswich Grammar School, Gout or someone like that, you see what I'm saying? Whose heritage is from Africa. So I'm just interested in where we can do better.
There are a number of local communities supporting new migrants, for example, specifically to Africa in every state, I think. One in WA, for example, where we've certainly touched very briefly with them, and again, they are well connected within their communities.
Yep.
So they would be a source of that kind of information.
Yeah.
In two discussions with two different ambassadors, one Ghana and one with Zimbabwe, in those brief meetings that I was with them, they literally showed me on their mobile phone a list of all of these individuals who are making a big difference here in Australia, and the qualifications that they have. I wasn't quite sure what purpose they did at the time, but I was quite impressed. And so they were saying, I guess the point at the end that he was trying to highlight is that they actually have very intelligent, very highly skilled individuals in their countries that we can rely on, even though, they have actually immigrated to Australia, but also that, in fact, they could become a bridge. So from our perspective, there are these sources of people that we could speak with to tap into who we might support on an individual level. We did about 3 years ago, and it was funded under the government. We actually did a training of women entrepreneurs in Africa, but we did that online, and again, we saw opportunities there in terms of their businesses, about how we could potentially link them with Australians. Again, there are these various kind of almost grassroots type outreach that could make a significant difference. And if we actually hold some of these, say we did actually invite women entrepreneurs or women in tech from Africa here to Australia, what we would do is we would host a gathering, a roundtable discussion, but also a networking with their counterparts, with Australian female tech entrepreneurs here. And a lot of them, and we have spoken to them, said that they would be supportive of trying to build those connections and strengthen those connections into something much more meaningful in terms of commercial trade.
Yeah.
So there are those opportunities, absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Great. Ms. Cochrane.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation today. My question is about what expertise and capability the Export Council of Australia currently has in relation to providing regulatory approval advice to businesses wanting to do, Australian businesses wanting to do trade on the African continent. Because my sense is the regulatory environment in, for example, Kenya would be very different to Botswana, Angola. Do we even have that expertise now? And if not, what is the strategy to develop it? And what kind of signals, if any, do you need from government in order to encourage that?
To be truthful, we don't have internal specialized expertise in terms of, say, Kenyan regulatory issues. However, what the Export Council does is that we have very close strategic partners and associates that actually we can tap into at any time that can give us very detailed, even a checklist if necessary, of the required regulatory requirements on any individual sector. And in fact, we are working with two in particular. One is exclusively using AI that can generate the report almost instantaneously. And it looks at everything that is certainly at least available publicly. And then we have another organization that does mix both AI and on-the-ground expertise that could then actually gather the required information on the ground. So, yeah.
Okay, so is this right then? If I'm an Australian business in mining, whatever, and I want to enter the Namibian market, just to pick any country, you have a relationship with someone on the ground within that market who can provide the advice. So you're kind of like the facilitator, as opposed to giving the advice directly yourselves.
Yes, we could do that. We could facilitate the right connections, the right information. Unfortunately, as a national body that actually is not specialized on any given country, we actually cover the entire world and across all different industries. We can't focus too much on any one particular area. However, we are starting to prioritize certain regions. So, and again, in terms of priorities, we are looking at Africa. But even within Africa, we're trying to focus on just a few countries in the short term.
And when you say prioritize, is that in the sense of developing the in-house skills necessary to provide advice, or to strengthen relationships that are already existing in certain countries on the African continent?
Both, but primarily in the context of where we put our focus on our efforts in. Simply because, for example, 2 weeks ago we were speaking with Argentinians. Yesterday I was dealing with the Vietnamese. So there are only so many hours in a day for us to focus on. However, we do the fact that we're even that we are here and engaging in this topic, we have made a decision that we will focus on Africa as well.
And the facilitator model is the same model you use for all regions around the country. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Collins, did you have a question? You're okay. Do we have any questions online? No. I've just got a question. So I know you were talking about some of the different industries and emerging industries. Are you seeing a trend? Like, are more Australian businesses coming to you wanting to invest in Africa? Like, have you seen a change over time?
Nothing in terms of a particular trend at this stage. We have gotten our intel, again, thank you for the last question, based on our connections, including, as we mentioned, we are in close discussion with African ambassadors. So they are telling us definitely in terms of priorities would be agri-tech, effectively to improve productivity, environmental issues, so green tech is a particular one. Cybersecurity, actually, I didn't mention that one, but that one is where definitely Australian exporters have actually come to us, actually asking us to see what the opportunities are there. The other thing is that anything in the context of trying to make some of these trade processes much more smoothly going by aligning some of these softwares and IT systems. So Australia is actually got a very strong reputation in that space in terms of logistics management, including using AI to orchestrate all of the robotics and all of the agents across logistics. So Australia has a particular strength in that space. And again, so as Africa is looking to modernize a lot of its systems, so they are looking at other partners. When I say other, not just simply themselves relying on other countries like the United States or Europe. They're looking at countries like Australia.
And just another question around the Australia Awards and the alumni. Do you have exposure to that in your role?
That example I gave about the training online,
yeah.
that was under the Australia
it
Awards.
was.
And that was a
Okay.
while ago now, so it might even be 4 years ago. But
Yeah.
yes, and that was actually a credit to one of Australia's high commissioners.
Yeah.
She drove that initiative, but as her time finished, it hadn't continued.
Okay.
So there definitely is a demand there. In fact, we couldn't take everyone in terms of the that particular session that we ran.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Yeah. Sure.
You mentioned earlier on that it's better to have delegations from Africa come to Australia. Just very briefly, why do you believe it should be that way around and not the other way around with Australians going to Africa? What are the advantages?
Yes. There's usually shortcomings in terms of although we do it a lot in terms of sending trade missions.
Yeah.
The issue is, especially with Africa, is that it just looks like we're trying to sell something.
Right. Okay.
And that doesn't always go down very well. And then the weakness on that as well is trying to get the right people in the room.
Yeah.
And that means you're only also able to bring a few Australians there. Yeah. But if you actually do it the other way around, you immediately get goodwill by actually inviting them to Australia. And then if you actually then have a good program here in Australia, you'll actually expose them to a lot more Australian businesses. So for value for money, we think it's much more effective approach.
Thank you.
And final question to Ms. Batt.
Just a quick one. So does the Export Council of Australia have an ongoing relationship or work with the Australian government or Austrade on an ongoing relationship, or is it just when you need to? Sort of?
We work very closely with DFAT, with Austrade. We're part of the Trade Diversification Network that was established. We work very closely, but again, there are different. Sometimes it doesn't align in terms of priorities of work, where we do, we certainly work very closely together.
So you can, if you see things happening like what's happening, you can provide advice. They're open to taking advice from you and all those sorts of things from things that you're seeing out in the market.
We try to,
yeah.
Yes. We sometimes we get better, we claim it, better intelligence than sometimes, other government agencies, simply because our connections with the business community internationally are actually quite free to talk to us about what they're seeing on the ground. And sometimes we do share that with the government.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, please forward it to the Secretariat by Thursday, 28th of May 2026. Please note that responses to questions on notice will be published on the website as submissions to the inquiry. You will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to assist you with answering any questions taken on notice today, and you will have an opportunity to request corrections to any transcription errors. I now declare the public hearing closed.